I'm Phil Boger, and I'm glad you're with us. I'm honored that you're listening, and if you are listening to this audiobook, there's a good chance that you make your living in sales or are responsible for managing salespeople. Well, guess what? You've just hit the sales lottery. Let me give you some great news. Closing the deal just got easy. Sean Sampson has developed, without a doubt, a proven system you, the sales professional or sales manager, has been waiting for. A way in which you can now gauge yourself and your team on the status of each and every proposal or sale that's out there hanging on the fence. For more than a decade, Sean has consulted and advised principal owners, CEOs, managers, and sales professionals around the world on how to grow their business. Sean is a subject expert at developing synergistic teams of leaders while delivering amazing coaching results that transform average salespeople and their organizations into what Sean would call the preferred source. Sean has personally worked with over 125 service businesses from 45 states and over 12 countries around the world. It's a lot of travel, a lot of time spent away from home and his family. When it comes to sales and relationship selling, he knows what he's doing and plays the game better than anybody. Notice I said the word game? Do I have your attention? I'm going to let Sean explain that to you in just a minute. Sean is the inventor of the Grab It guitar stand and president of both Grab It Incorporated and Sean Sampson Training. He's an entrepreneur, an accomplished musician, a professional speaker, a father of 3, and a husband of 27 years. And yes, even a cancer survivor. So wake up. It's time to learn from a guy that actually did it. Here's Sean to tell you how he turned a mediocre sales career around by implementing 5 simple steps.
Hey, thanks, Phil, for that awesome introduction. Phil's an amazing singer, and I've been listening to that voice ever since I was a young kid. And to have Phil introduce me here on for my book here is it's quite an honor. I wish I had Phil's voice, but he's got an amazing way of making average words seem a lot more interesting than the average Joe. But I don't have Phil's voice, but what I do have is a proven system and a way in which you can make a hell of a lot more money. So let me just share something with you. And I was thinking about this today as I was coming here to the studio and thinking about some of the things I'd like to get across to you guys. And I thought about this. The human brain, it didn't evolve to process and connect with boring statistics. I know I'm not that guy. And I know our brains thrive off of managing specific steps through simple implementation, through habit, and through stories that we can relate to emotionally. So it's time that you wake up out of that walking sales coma and start to recognize the 5 reasons why people don't buy. Because I can personally guarantee that you are going to increase your sales and your closing by 50% or more within the next 60 days. And I'm going to do that through explaining to you and through walking you through real life stories through each of these reasons why people don't buy. Do you follow me? So our choice as professional salespeople is to uncover and utilize specific words and questions that trigger emotion, get people to start thinking and solve problems, right? So it's my job to get you emotionally involved. And the only way for me to do that is through this audiobook and through stories. So let me ask you this question. When it comes to selling, what really matters to you? What really matters to you? If you ask me that question today, this is what would be my answer. What really matters to me most is being able to solve the problems of my customers and clients. It really is that simple. So the 5 reasons why people don't buy. After training and consulting folks just like you all over the world, it really does kind of narrow it down or boil it down to really just 5 specific reasons. And, after inventing Grab It in 2007 and being an international sales trainer, consultant, and like Phil said, working with over 125 different companies around the world, it really what it boils down to is I'm a sales guy. And that's really what I love to do. I'm a salesperson. I'm a sales consultant just like you guys. And one of the things that I've noticed, a couple things that I've noticed over the years is managers struggle to manage. And that's the reason why I came up with the Blueberry Management System. And secondly, which is just as bad or just as important, is salespeople struggle to sell and to close business. And the people that know me, the people that I've coached and consulted all over the world, have heard me talk about the 5 reasons why people don't buy for years, probably going on 10 years now. And even if you've listened to, think about this, even if you've listened to countless other sales CDs in the past, or you've read books on sales, and you can't find anything new, this is going to be a lot different, because it really is truly a back to basics approach to sales, relationship selling, and closing business. So sit back, listen, and enjoy. The folks that know me, my friends, my family, you know that I have 3 great kids. I'm a musician. I've been married for 26 years. I've toured the country, played in a rock band. I've been in movies, and from like 1999 to like 2003, I hit a string of bad luck. But let me just explain for a second. So in 1999, I was feeling really crummy, and I just like most guys or most people, you think that maybe you have just a cold or something just doesn't feel right, and it's going to go away. And in 1999, I was feeling that way, and I had been feeling crummy for probably 2 or 3 weeks. And I can remember that it was just a feeling that it didn't feel right to me. You guys know what I'm talking about out there, when something just doesn't feel normal, right? We've all felt that way. And my wife said, "Hey, look, you need to go to the doctor and figure out what is wrong with you." So I did. And in March of 1999, for my 30th birthday, they told me that I had cancer. And when you get diagnosed with something like that, it is it's a life-changing experience, because for me, I've always had a fear of death. I not that you would know this, but I can't drive past cemeteries, and I can't drive past things like that without looking the other way, because I'm so fearful of death like that, and it drives me crazy, but it is what it is. So that's my phobia. So when someone tells you that you have cancer and you associate cancer with the fear of death and dying, that was a point in my life where it was just an unreal experience. In 2001, we had sold our house, and I had nowhere to go. So we moved in with my mother-in-law. And it was just me, it was my wife, and it was our 3 kids living in this small bungalow, and my kids didn't have a room. My wife and I shared a room with our smallest son. I was working construction as a laborer, and I was killing my body, but when you have to take care of your family, you have to do what you have to do. I was in a state of depression, and as I was getting more depressed, I started drinking more. And when I tell you that I started drinking more. I started drinking, and by the way, playing in a band didn't help. So when you mix being a musician, being depressed, still living with a fear of having cancer a few years prior to that, and not having any money in the bank, and not having anywhere to go or having anything to look forward to, being an alcoholic and drinking like that was something that unfortunately was an everyday thing for me. And it just seemed like nothing was going right for me. And I couldn't catch a break. And I remember my wife's uncle telling me, Sean, get out of construction and get into sales. Well, the problem with that was I've never had a sales job prior to that. So who was going to hire me to do any sales, right? So I put out some applications and I told my wife, look, I gotta get out of construction. I don't have a choice. I gotta do this. So I did it. I finally landed a job and I started selling cell phones of all things. And I started selling, if you guys remember, the old Nextel phones. It was like that direct connect thing, right? That was the hot thing back in the early 2000s. Well, I finally got a job selling cell phones. And I can remember it was the first quota that I ever had. I had to sell 50 lines a month. And I was like, man, that seems like a lot. And I remember, I'll never forget this. I remember walking out of the guy's office who hired me. He was the guy that owned the small cell phone company. And he told me my quota was 50 lines a month. And I remember walking out of the office and the manager had walked back into his office. And I remember the manager asking this guy, how many lines did you tell him he had to sell? And he said, I told him he had to sell 50 lines a month. And I remember what the manager said. And he said underneath his breath, he goes, that's a lot of lines a month. That's a lot of lines. But I didn't know honestly, I didn't know any different. I just thought, 50 lines a month. I got my first sales job. I'm living with my mother-in-law. I don't have a ton of bills, but I got to start someplace, right? So what did I do? How did I sell 50 lines a month? And by the way, I got to be honest with you guys. I didn't know how to sell 50 lines a month. I just knew that this guy said, okay, here's your quota. Go out there and do it. He said, if you sell 50 lines a month, I'll give you X amount of money a month in commission. I said, awesome. That sounds good to me, man. It was my first sales job. So I was like, great. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to murder this thing. I'm going to go out there and sell. I'm going to sell as much as I can, obviously. But I had to think of myself, how was I going to do that? I honestly didn't want to knock on doors and try to sell 50 lines a month. I didn't think that was probably a good idea. So what I did was, there was a grocery store down the street. And back in the early 2000s, if you guys remember, banks were putting banks in grocery stores and things like that. So in this grocery store down the street, they had put a bank. And I thought to myself, well, Saturday's got to be the biggest day of the week for shopping, right? That's usually when my wife shops. Saturday's got to be the busiest day of the week. And it's probably the busiest day of the week where people do banking and they try to get things out of the way that they couldn't do during the week. So I went into the grocery store and I asked to see the manager, and he came out and I said, look, my name's Sean Sampson. I said, I'm working for the cellular company down the street. I said, I think I can help you. And he goes, well, how can you help me? I said, well, look, if I advertise that we're going to be here selling cell phones and we'll give specific deals and we'll do giveaways and things like that, maybe that'll draw people to your store. And I said, and that's going to help me sell what I need to sell too. And he goes, you know what? He goes, let's give it a shot. He goes, we've never done that. He goes, but let's give it a shot. And I said, okay, thanks. I said, but by the way, I want to set up by the bank in the grocery store. He said, okay, no problem. So the first Saturday that I was there, I remember the first Saturday that I was there, I sold, it was right around between 25 and 30 lines the first day. And my quota was 50 lines for the month. And I remember walking out of that grocery store that day, again, selling probably 25 to 30 lines, going, man, that was easy. But I only sold 25 or 30 lines, and I started looking at all the people that came in and out of that store. And we started early, if I remember. It was probably, maybe we started around 9 o'clock in the morning. I didn't leave there until it had to be sometime around dinner time. I remember the sun was going down. But I remember, man, out of all those people that walked in and out of that grocery store, only 25 or 30 people bought cell phones from me that day. Why did I only sell 25 or 30 lines? There had to be something I was missing. And whether I knew it at that point or not, I really started to figure out, I started thinking, let's put it that way, it's probably a better way to say it. I started thinking, there has to be a reason. What am I missing? Why are people buying from me? And again, 25 or 30 lines was great. But what was the reason why I didn't get 50 lines that day? Or what was the reason why I didn't get 60 lines that day? And again, that's when I started figuring out, well, there's a reason why people aren't buying from me. I'm going to get into that down the road here as we talk about the 5 reasons why people don't buy. July of 2003. I remember I was selling cell phones, and I had my resume. I knew that I wasn't going to do that forever, obviously. So I had my resume on one of the big job sites. And in July of 2003, I got a phone call from a guy named Glenn Mack for a company out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And Glenn had found my resume on a big job site, and he had called me, and he said, I think you have what it takes, or at least it's what your resume says you have. I think you have what it takes to sell a specific kind of service in Cleveland, Ohio. And I said, well, what is this? What is the service? What is it? What is the job? He said, well, it's associated with selling electrical maintenance, reducing business interruption, and protecting the continuity of businesses like manufacturing, data centers, schools, things like that. Folks that can't afford to have their power fail. Does that make sense? Okay. It was service. It was an intangible. It wasn't a product. It was a service. And I had never sold a service before. I've always sold something that was tangible. I sold cell phones, right? But he said, I think you got what it takes. He goes, why don't you meet me for the interview? I'll introduce you to the owner, and let's see what happens. So we did. And I got the job. And I remember when I got the job, they had slid over a contract to me. Nobody ever gave me a contract before. So this was great. So remember, this is in 2003. And I was living with my mother-in-law. I wasn't making any money. So in 2003, they slid a contract over to me, and they said, I want to pay you $50,000 a year. $50,000. By the way, when you're living with your mother-in-law and you don't have any dough, and somebody slides a contract over for $50,000 a year, plus the commission structure was amazing. I'm like, damn, this is great. 50 grand. I couldn't wait to get into my car and get back home to tell my wife that I just got the job and they offered me $50,000 a year. I knew it in August of 2003. They had shipped me off to Pittsburgh to get trained. It was a 2-week training. And I came back and I hit the streets. I called on everybody that I could possibly think of in just about every type of vertical market. And I did really, really well. And my activity, and you guys know, you're salespeople, right? My activity was off the charts. And I remember I was so happy that I was busy and I had something to do, but I was also really happy for one reason. I loved what I was doing because I loved to sell. It was exciting for me. It was, when I would close business, I remember the look on folks' face when I would close a deal, and they were happy to do business with me. It was relationship selling, and I didn't really know it was relationship selling at that point, but it was, I can remember how happy I was and how excited I was to start closing business. So I really did well, and I always sold above my quota. I was always one of the top salespeople in the network. But I wasn't seeing I mean, honestly, I really wasn't seeing the results that I was looking for, and I thought I could do better. And I really couldn't figure out why I had more prospects saying no to me than folks that were saying yes to me. Does that make sense? So when you have that much activity and yes, you're closing business. But when you have that much activity and more folks are saying no to you than they are saying yes to you, you gotta take a step back as a savvy salesperson and say, all right, so what's the most obvious thing I'm missing? So I started thinking back about some of the objections I was getting back a couple of years prior to that at the grocery store, and why some people said yes, they would love to buy a cell phone from me, and why more people said no, I don't need a cell phone right now. So I started thinking about the objections that I was getting. And just at that time, just by chance, I was given an audiobook of CDs, of sales CDs from the president of our company. And the CDs were from a guy by the name of Jim Cathcart. And Jim's a very good friend of mine, even to this day. And I started to listen to Jim's CDs, and I started to educate myself in the art of sales and human development, and really trying to get an idea of the science behind sales and consulting. Because up to that point, the only formal training I had was 2 weeks in Pittsburgh, going through this training of how to sell the service I was selling, but I had no formal training in sales. Nobody ever taught me how to sell. So when I got a hold of Jim's CDs, it was great. It was eye-opening. I can remember there was probably 10 or 15 CDs in that set. And I probably rolled through those 10 or 15 CDs 5 times, maybe more. And I would remember the things that Jim had said about relationship selling and why people buy and why people don't buy. And then I started putting 2 and 2 together in regards to why someone was buying a cell phone from me and why they weren't buying a cell phone from me. And I started putting all these things together, and I said, well, damn, there's really only 5 reasons that I could come up with at that point. There was really only 5 reasons why someone was giving me objections as to why they weren't going to buy from me. And it started to make sense at that point. Then I started reading books like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Listening to guys like Earl Nightingale. I was YouTubing everything. I was reading books like The Winner's Brain. And I had been introduced to Hal Becker at that point, and reading Hal's books, and YouTubing the hell out of Tony Robbins and Who Moved My Cheese and The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and you get it. I tried to educate myself the best as I possibly could. So again, what did I get all of that? Again, certainly in education, right? But what I really got out of it was I started honing, and at that point is when I really honed the 5 reasons why people don't buy. Once I figured that out, it was like, and I really mean this, as cheesy as it sounds, it was the aha moment for me. All right, so grab a pen, grab a pencil, grab something to write with, because I'm going to let you know what the 5 reasons why people don't buy are. Are you ready? Number 1, no need. I'm going to explain all these as we get further in the book. So number 1, no need. 2, no money. 3, no authority. 4, it's a big one. Ready? No trust. That's a huge one, right? But the last one, to me, is probably the most important, and I'm going to explain that again later on. The last one is wrong price. Those 5 reasons, I went from about a 45% closing ratio to about a 70, or maybe even a little higher, 70% closing ratio. And then it even got better as I started getting better in implementing these 5 reasons. Now understand that that was on all new business. Everyone should have a high close rate with people they already have relationships with, right? But I was closing 70% on all new business. These are folks that I just met. And the reason why I was having that type of success was because I was gauging everything off of the 5 reasons why people didn't buy or weren't going to buy. What I would do is after I would go ahead and present a contract or a scope of work or whatever I had built, I would come out of that meeting and this is what I would do. I would say to myself, all right, Sean, here's the 5 reasons why people don't buy. No money, no need, no trust, no authority, wrong price, right? I was taking 3 of those. And I know this is going to sound stupid simple to you, but let me just tell you that it absolutely works. And this is what I've been doing for the past 17 years. I would take 3 of those and say, okay, out of those 5, take 3 of those. And if I had 3 positives out of those 5, if I knew they had a need, I knew they were a decision maker, which is the authority, and I knew they had money they were going to buy. If I knew that the trust was there, they had the authority, and they saw the need, they were going to buy. Right? I knew it was the right price, they had the authority, and the need was there, they were going to buy. It doesn't matter how you flip-flop them. It's all the same. I was just trying to my thought process was to take 3 positives out of those 5 reasons why people don't buy and say, look, if I can get those 3 positives, I knew that they were going to buy from me. I became so successful at selling these service agreements and selling this intangible service, for lack of better words, that I started getting noticed by the corporate office that was in Pittsburgh. And in 2007, because remember, I had started this in 2003. In 2007, they took a meeting with me and they said, hey, we'd like for you to work for us directly, for the corporate office, for the actual franchise. And we'd like for you to help us coach and train other folks like you around the world. How do you sell the service? How do you get people to buy? How do you do all that? So in 2007, I came over to the corporate side, and before I knew it, I was applying the things that I was doing here in Cleveland, Ohio, applying and coaching folks in the UK and in Germany and in Texas and in California and in Poland and all over the world. I was helping train and develop new talent. I was helping motivate people and helping salespeople just like you sell more.
A look at different cultures and the selling approach.
A kid that grew up in Wickliffe, Ohio, who had really no formal sales training, educating myself, and just kicking some butt at a service that I really loved to sell, and I was really good at it. But here I was now, this guy that was helping train sales professionals all over the world. And what I noticed was, and this is kind of cool, and I want you to think about this, it was great to implement and to think about the 5 reasons why people don't buy. Was it the same in other cultures? Right? Because people buy differently. You're not going to take a guy from New York City and his sales approach and the way he does things, take a guy from New York City and place him in Nashville, Tennessee. You're not going to take a guy from Nashville, Tennessee and place him in a big city like Chicago, right? People sell differently. I get that. Cultures differ, and the approach and the way that you sell is different. So that was really cool for me to see, because I got a chance to see the way that the guy in London sold, and the guy in Poland sold, and the guy in California sold. But you know what didn't change? What didn't change was the reason why people were buying or why they weren't going to buy. Those 5 reasons stayed the same across the board. It didn't change. Since 2007, when I started coaching and training professionally, what I've done is I've saved every single notebook from every single sales call and coaching visit I've ever been on. I can tell you exactly where I was February 13th of 2009, who I was with, what the meeting was, and how the meeting went. I can go back and tell you exactly why that specific person either failed or succeeded and what it was due to. And it was due to whether or not they understood the 5 reasons why people don't buy.
Inventing Grab It and applying the 5 reasons.
In 2006, when I came up with the idea for Grab It, I had to get my idea to market. And by the way, I have a little theory about when you have an idea, and it kind of goes like this. If you have an idea and you think about it and it goes away the next day, it probably wasn't a good idea. But if you think about it for the next 2 or 3 days or even a week after that, it might be a good idea, and it's probably worth investigating. And that was me. When my buddy Adam wrapped his cord around his ankle and ripped his new Les Paul out of that crappy guitar stand he had, and his guitar hit the floor, I said to myself, how come no one makes a guitar stand where it grabs the neck of the guitar? And it's real simple. It's an easy one-handed operation. How come nobody does that? So I kept thinking about it. So I was passionate about trying to find whether or not there was anything out there like that. But I also had to get my idea to market in the event that there was nothing out there like my idea. Does that make sense? So as I was pitching my idea to specific manufacturers, I found myself using the same strategy and the same mindset of what I was doing for my day job, and I was applying that to my meetings with specific manufacturers. Do you follow me? Why would someone want to do business with me? Does my invention solve a problem? Do they have money, right? What have they introduced to the market in the last couple of years like this? Was there anything else like this? Is there a need for Grab It? Was there a need for my idea? I was able to get my product, my invention, my baby into the global marketplace by gauging myself and the situation off of the 5 reasons that people don't buy that I developed back in 2002, 2003.
Pay attention.
As we move forward in the book, and as we start to really hone in and recognize the 5 reasons why people don't buy again, we also have to understand that as sales professionals, as consultants, as problem solvers, right? Because we're salespeople, we're problem solvers. As the subject experts, we have to understand that there are specific characteristics of great salespeople, right? Because we can understand all we want about the 5 reasons why people don't buy. But you have to have specific characteristics as a salesperson, as a sales professional, to even have those 5 things work. Does that make sense? Guess how many times I've been asked this specific question by principal owners or general managers? Ready? Wait for it. Why is my sales girl or my sales guy failing? And really, you have to look at these 4 characteristics of great salespeople. I want you to get a pen. I want you to write this down because these 4 are really important. The first one is curiosity. Salespeople that are out there selling, without curiosity, you're probably not going to be selling for long, right? Because without curiosity, how do you know what the needs are of the customer? Would you guys agree with that, right? 2 is empathy. And how in the hell do you coach or train empathy? The answer to that is you don't. To me, empathy is something that comes naturally that salesperson has or they don't. It's just there, right? The third one is super important. Well, they're all important. But the third one is instinct, right? It's your sales DNA. It's that sales gene, right? You have an instinct for sales. You just know, right? You just get it. And the fourth one that I've seen across the board, the fourth characteristic is great salespeople have a championship level confidence in themselves. They're just confident about everything that they do. Each part of the sales process with presenting and talking and educating. You follow me? These sales folks also have their elevator pitch down to a science. Remember what Albert Einstein said, right? You guys know this one. And it really is one of my favorite quotes of all time. And I've said it 1,000 times. Albert Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, then you don't know it well enough. How many times have you asked somebody, what is it that you do for a living? And they have talked your ear off. Or you just get a blank stare, right? It's like nobody's ever asked them that question before. What is it that they do for a living? And the folks that get it also, the folks that have these 4 specific characteristics to them, they always have their appointment setting down to a science as well, right? They don't sell over the phone, by the way. They're only calling to get the appointment.
Key ingredients of great salespeople.
All right, let's look at some additional key traits that great salespeople have. And I wrote these down. I've been writing these down, I should say, for years in regards to the sales folks that are the heavy hitters, the people that are the folks that just continuously kill it every year. Their sales quotas, they have a whatever it takes attitude, right? But some additional key ingredients that I see is one is they have, the heavy hitters, they have tenacity. You know, they have the persistence and they have the stamina to be a great salesperson. The next one is they have stubbornness, you know? And the stubbornness is really kind of unique because there's nothing peripheral about great salespeople. They are headstrong. They have blinders on. They are there to look for the next customer so they can turn them into a client. They want to sell you. They want to take care of you and move on. Just some stats that I was reading about the other day, and I'm sure you guys have probably heard this one. You know, 44% of salespeople give up after only one follow-up call. Think about that for a second. That's a pretty sad number. 44% of sales folks give up after only one follow-up. And then 80% of prospects require at least 5 follow-up calls or touches. So think about that. 80% of prospects require at least 5 follow-up calls or touches. Those are some staggering stats, if you ask me. Let's look at conviction. Great salespeople have conviction. They have a belief. They have a certainty in what they're doing, right? They also have that moxie. You guys know what I mean by having that moxie? They have that character. They have that nerve, or they have that swagger about them. I can remember when I first started selling, I would go to what we called a continuing education conference, and I was probably only doing what I was doing maybe for about a year or two, but the sales folks that were up there that were getting their sales awards, they had that swagger, they had that moxie about them, not only when they would get up and walk to get their awards, but also when they spoke about how they did it and about how they killed their sales quotas and about how they were doing the things that you wish that you could do, but you didn't really probably know how to do it at that time, because you probably didn't have that moxie or that conviction yet, or that tenacity yet, because maybe you were a rookie salesperson. And the last thing is you're probably going to think I'm a little crazy when I say this, but I'll explain it in a second. An ingredient that I always look for, I guess, and I know that I had it, and I'm glad I had it, and in some cases I still do, is great salespeople sometimes are a little naive. And when you look at that word naive, you think to yourself, well, that's probably not a good trait to have as a salesperson or a professional. But I disagree with you, because to me, when I look at the word naive, I don't mean that as they're stupid or they don't know what they're doing or they're not dialed in to what it is that they're selling or how they're doing things. The way I look at it is that there's a simplicity and there's an innocence to the way that they're looking at opportunity and the way that they're looking at how to call on folks. And I'll give you an example. I can remember when I first started selling the service that I was speaking about earlier, and I remember trying to get into one of our local airports that was run by some very important people that you had to go through a process in order to get to. And it was one of those processes where you had to do this, and this, and then you had to wait. Well, not knowing what that process was and not understanding what those steps were that you had to take, I didn't know that those roadblocks were there. So I didn't take those steps. I went straight to the top and I got to the people that I needed to get to, who were the decision makers and who were the folks that were in charge, the people that were the authority. Does that make sense? So I didn't see the roadblocks. I was naive from a perspective of not knowing the process that was supposed to be in front of me, but I really didn't care, and obviously I didn't know. Does that make sense?
You have to love the game.
If you're serious, if you're really serious about selling and what it is that you do for a living, you have to love the game. Can I get an amen? Because sales isn't what you do, it's who you are. Come on, you guys, you have to agree with that, right? Can I get an amen again? According to sources like myplan.com and businessinsider.com, and I think you already know this, sales is obviously one of the top paying positions in the world. Sales tops over professions like air traffic controllers and pharmacists and physicists. Boring, sorry, physicists. If you make your living selling like I have, and I still do, and if you want more take-home pay, think about that for a second. If you want more take-home pay, like Hal Becker says, then you really need to take ownership of what we've already talked about, and certainly what I'm about to talk about here shortly. You follow me? I'm going to dummy up the sales process for you in 5 easy steps, okay? I'm also going to explain and discuss each section or reason with a real life circumstance or experience that actually happened to me either while selling myself, right? Or while coaching and consulting in the field. And then lastly, I'm going to go as far as to say that if you follow these 5 reasons that we're talking about, these 5 reasons why people don't buy, I mean, really, really respect and really understand why it is that people don't buy, or better yet, haven't bought from you yet, you're going to increase your closing ratio by 40, 50% or more, I guarantee it. I did, and I told you guys about that. Can you imagine increasing your closing rate by 40 or 50% more? But you absolutely have to make these 5 reasons a part of your everyday selling and consulting process, or the changes that you're looking for, or the changes that you're hoping for. It's never going to happen.
The guy from Salt Lake City.
Years ago, I was coaching a guy by the name of Josh in Salt Lake City, Utah, who had just recently finished a week-long sales training with me in Pittsburgh, and got into Utah, and he picked me up from the airport, and we went to grab some lunch, and we were talking about what his sales were that week, and just looking at what he's been doing, and just looking at the things that people he's been calling on and things like that. And after lunch, we drove over to the office, and when we finally got into his office and we got to his desk, there they were. The 5 reasons why people don't buy, laminated and hanging from the shelf on his cubicle. Now, as you probably imagine, these 5 reasons that I'm talking about have been the core part of my sales training for years and years. So I asked him, I go, Josh, you actually laminated the 5 reasons we discussed in class. I'm like, how cool is that, man? And he looked directly at me and he said, Sean, he says, I'll never forget what you taught me in class. I'll never forget and I'll never forget what he said to me. He said, it's because of your training and the 5 reasons that people don't buy that I've been able to take control of my sales and what it is that I've been hired to do. And I looked at him and I said, what are you going to do with all that extra money? And he just laughed, right? I said, keep those commission checks rolling in, baby, right? Okay, let's be honest, folks, right? Sales is nothing more than a big daily game, if you will. Yeah, I said it. And I know I have your attention at this point. I'm sure of it. You folks that are driving around out there thinking, what the hell is he talking about? Is there a science behind sales, or do most failing salespeople overthink the actual process of sales? Well, the answer is yes and yes. I've spent thousands of hours in the field coaching, consulting, and mentoring sales professionals just like you guys, just like you folks that are listening to this. And in my opinion, most of the salespeople I've worked with tend to overthink the sales process. Now, I know what some of you are thinking right now, especially those sales professionals who have spent and continue to spend hundreds or even thousands of dollars each year on additional sales training and seminars and books and audio CDs, you name it. Now, some of you, well, probably most of you are probably thinking, it's no game, Sean. Sales isn't a game, not when you have a mortgage that's due each month, kids in school, and a ton of financial responsibility. I get it. Don't worry, I get it. But when I refer to sales as a big game, it's not meant to mock the job or, to poke fun at the seriousness of the profession that we're in. Not at all. I mean, look, I'm a sales guy through and through too. It's my passion. So I'm sitting here this evening recording this for you so you guys can understand how it is, not only that how I feel, but how I want to help you. So on the contrary, there is without a doubt a science behind sales and consulting, and I truly mean that. You guys know that. But what you have to know is you have to know how to play the game. And when you do, it gets very exciting. But I want you to think about that now, the word exciting. When was the last time you were excited about getting up every morning and selling? When was the last time you jumped out of bed and went, damn, I cannot wait to get into this meeting today. Damn, I cannot wait to close this deal today. Damn, I cannot wait to get in front of these people today. Because I know what it is that I can do, and I know I'm going to sell them. I know they're going to see value. I know they're going to see the things that I bring to the table are different than what they already have. And when I tell them what makes us different, when I educate them and consult them from a features to benefits perspective, they're going to understand it. And that's exciting. So when was the last time you were excited about sales? But actually, when you break it down, its format and the simplicity of why people buy or don't buy, it's really very simple. That is what struggling salespeople don't understand. And to be brutally honest with you, most, not all, but most will never get it. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it's estimated that there's about 14 million salespeople in the United States today. 14 million people in the United States today in sales or in sales-related positions. Think about that for a second. That's amazing. So a little more than 4% of the population. Now, notice I said salespeople, and that's sales professionals. Remember the old saying that 20% of the people deliver 80% of the results, right? So wow, 14 million people, that's a stunning number of people who rely on making the sale and bringing home the bacon every single day, week in, week out, right? 14 million people a day hammering phones, setting appointments, and trying to get to decision makers. That's, even for as long as I've been in the industry, it's an amazing number to me. 14 million trying to get it right, but unfortunately, most just don't understand the rules of the game, like we were talking about before. Because in today's fast-paced world of sales, you have to be able to recognize opportunity in real time before the transaction ever happens. Think about that. Being able to recognize the opportunity in real time before the transaction ever happens. When you're in meetings or you're on the phone, you have to be able to change strategies also, from an X's and O's perspective, almost instantaneously. You have to be able to make that shift like that. If you're going to make sales your livelihood, you have no choice other than to be persistent, tenacious, tireless, and well organized, guys. In order to play the game, you must be diplomatic and be able to handle objections while they're still merely concerns. But you must be smart enough to realize that there are 13,999,999 people right behind you waiting for you to screw up. And it only takes once. As part of my sales training over the last 10 years or so, and I've even asked this when I've been on site and asking folks too, it's just, I've always enjoyed asking the same question to each class or each individual. And here's the question that I always ask. I always say, with so many sales folks out there today, why would someone want to do business with you? Now stop, think about that, and ask yourself that same question. With so many salespeople out there today, what did we say was 14 million salespeople, right? Why would someone want to do business with you? Now, in most of my classes, at first there's a silence. No one really wants to be the first person to answer anything. They kind of all just sit there because everybody's either worried about the answer they give or nobody wants to give the first answer. But I've received some great answers over the years, and honestly, there really isn't a wrong answer, to be honest with you. In fact, just recently, I got this answer from a guy in a group at a franchising expo. His answer was, "I know my products and services are better than my competitor." Well, I'm not even sure if that's even an answer or the answer I was looking for, but okay, very good, but you're supposed to, right? Or this one, "Our company has 24/7 response time." Okay, well, pretty much in today's day and age, if you don't react to your customers' needs immediately, they'll just simply call someone else anyways, right? I know my phone's on 24/7. Or here's one that I get a lot. "Our company has the best pricing. We're really competitive." Well, that's all good, and I'm sure that your company does have the best pricing. Congratulations and good luck with that. But what that tells me is that your prices are probably too low and you're not nearly charging enough, to be honest with you. The fact and the real truth of the matter is that I rarely get the answer I'm looking for, honestly. The only answer, in my opinion, is people should want to do business with you is because they trust you. Who really gives a crap about 24/7 response? You have to do that anyway. So your prices are the lowest. Big deal. Raise them. In fact, the reason why people aren't paying you more is simple because they think you're just like everyone else. Honestly, think about that. You should know your product and service better than your competitor. That's why you've been hired to do the job. Look, trust is the number one reason why people do or don't want to do business with you or buy from you. It's plain and simple. Which leads us into the first of the 5 reasons why people don't buy, and that is no trust.
Reason number 1, no trust.
Yeah, this one's a biggie, guys. No trust. It all starts here. Now, all 5 reasons obviously are keys to the pieces of the sales puzzle. I get it, and keys as to whether or not someone will or won't do business with you. No one buys anything or does business with anyone unless the trust is there. You have to agree with that, right? Trust is without a doubt the most important factor in any relationship, and in your case, in our case, sales and what we do for a living, right? It takes time to develop trust and rapport with potential prospects or customers. It just does. Relationships aren't fostered overnight, especially when the prospect you're calling on has been doing business with another service provider or company or vendor for years. Think about that. Why should they switch now when their trust is with someone else? That's a great question, don't you think? That's something to think about. Here's something else that salespeople forget too. Remember that you too are a buyer. You too are a customer. Did you forget that when you were asking for their business? You too have specific people you go to and trust for whatever reason. You too are a buyer. The same mechanic or doctor you've been going to for years, right? You trust them. Or how about that attorney that you've been using for years and have consulted in, right? I would hope you trust that guy. How about your broker who you put your trust in to make sure that the investments that he's making for you pay the dividends that you're looking for, right? Man, you should probably trust that guy, right? Oh, and by the way, it doesn't mean that the folks that you trust are the cheapest either. In fact, in a recent study that I read, about 7 out of 10 people, about 70%, are ready and willing to spend about 13% more with the people they believe to be the subject experts or the people that they trust. They don't care if something is more expensive because you told them it was the right thing to do. They trusted you. We feel safe, we feel comfortable and secure in knowing that because the trust and the relationship is so strong that we're willing to make paying that higher price irrelevant. You follow me? So let's get into real life examples of what it is we're talking about here, okay? Let me share with you a real life example of how important trust really is and why it's one of the reasons why people don't buy. Some years ago, I was in the great state of Texas coaching a new sales rep that had just come through my sales training. So we're going to call his company XYZ Company, okay? So I remember our meeting was scheduled for later in the day, probably around 3:30 or so, with a local manufacturer in the area. Now, this sales rep was new to the company, but it turns out that XYZ Company had been servicing this plant for a number of years. Do you follow me? So we pulled up to the building where the customer's office was, and I started asking the sales rep the same questions I normally do prior to going into any meeting. Do you know what they do? Have you worked with them before? The guy that we're speaking to, what's his position in the company? Is he normally the guy that gives a go-ahead on other projects? You know, just just specific questions that I always ask the sales rep prior to going into the meeting, because I want to make sure that I want to make sure I know what's going on before I walk into the meeting here myself. Okay, so again, just trying to get some history of sorts of what I can expect. So this specific prospect or this specific customer was a lead that an inside project manager had given him a few days earlier. So there's already an established relationship. There's already an established trust with this customer. Okay. So we walked in the lobby and waited for a bit for the guy to come out to get us. And after a while, we finally made our way back to the customer's office, to the guy's office, where he sat us down in 2 chairs directly facing him. Now, I don't know about you folks, but one of the very first things that I do when I get into anyone's office is look around for things to talk about. So I need to quickly uncover what their interests are and build trust and rapport quickly. I need things to talk about, right? My curiosity level's got to be skying. So scattered right there on the edge of the desk in front of me were, I would say, about 7 to 10 different business cards right in front of us. Now, in my opinion, red flag. Why red flag? Think about that. Why would I be worried or concerned or at least curious about that? In fact, I noticed some of these cards happen to be in the same business and delivered a very similar service as XYZ company, believe it or not. So again, as curiosity would have it, which is what the majority of most salespeople lack, by the way, I asked about the cards, or made a comment, I should say, about how many cards were sitting there. And here's what he said to us. Here's what he said to me. He said, son, and by the way, they always start with calling you son in Texas, by the way. He said, son, I start my day off around 6 a.m. in the morning, every morning, but I'm not actually on the clock until 8. So he said, I use those 2 hours in the morning to get the things done that I'm just not able to do once that clock hits 8 a.m. He said, once that bell rings, the floodgates open, and my phone never stops ringing with people that want to sell me something. These 7 to 10 cards you see here in front of you guys are just the people that came in today to talk to me. It was 3:30 in the afternoon. The guy's already got 7 to 10 cards in there. And 95% of them never had an appointment. 95% of these people never even called the guy to tell them that they were coming. And by the way, that reminds me, don't ever drop in and try to catch people you don't know during the day. It's unprofessional, and honestly, it's aggravating to folks. It really is. And if you're trying to bring these folks on as customers, they're going to remember that, okay? He said, in fact, some of these folks are in the same line of work and offer very similar services as XYZ. So I had to ask, the same question I've always asked each and every class or people in my class in a very polite way. I said, I understand that you've been working with XYZ for years now. Is that right? He said, yes, sir. I said, if some of these other companies offer similar products or services, what's made you stick with XYZ throughout the years? He looked at me and said, because I trust them. He said, in fact, to be honest with you, we're required to get 3 bids from most of what we do. He said, in fact, to be honest with you, they're actually the most expensive for what they do. But they do great work. I need it done right. And I trust them. So, remember, guys, that if the trust is there, there's no reason to continue to sell, right? The relationship takes over at that point.
The kid at the music store.
So let me tell you about the kid at the music store and what happened to me some years ago. And I think you guys are really going to appreciate this story. So it was a day where I was coming back. I think I was coming back from a business trip, and I had walked into one of the main music stores here in Cleveland. And I've been in the store, 100 times, and it's a great store. I love the store. Customer service isn't very good, and the folks that I dealt with in the drum department, and those are the folks folks that know me know that I play drums and I'm playing drums forever, and that I beeline for that drum section, right? So beeline for the drum section, finally into the drum section, and coming around the counter is a kid that I've seen before, and he said, "Hey, my name's Jamie. Can I help you?" And somebody at a music store says, "Hey, my name's Jamie. Can I help you?" That's a bit of a kind of throws you off a little bit. Usually doesn't happen. Okay. So I said, "Hey, my name's Sean." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I've seen you here before." He goes, "How can I help you?" And I said, "You know what, man?" And I said what we all say when we get into stores, right? "Just looking." He goes, "Okay." He says, "If I can help you with anything, let me know. If I can answer any questions, be happy to." I said, "Okay." So he gave me about maybe 5 or 10 minutes or so. And then I saw him kind of like tagging along behind me. And before I knew it, he had said, "Hey, what type of drums do you play?" And I told him what type of drums I played. He goes, "Yeah, those are great drums, man." He goes, "A lot of my friends play those drums." He goes, "I used to have the same exact set. Great drum." He says, "Hey, are you using, what kind of music are you playing?" I said, "In this band," I play a lot of rock." He goes, "Well, then you're probably using double brace hardware, right?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Yeah, double brace hardware is great, blah, blah, blah." He said, "What kind of sticks are you using?" I said, "Well, I'm using nylon tip stick instead of a wood tip." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "What size stick are you using?" I said, "Well, I'm using the Extreme 5A nylon." He goes, "Yeah, great stick, love it." He goes, "Actually, yeah, guys, I was using the 5A nylon for forever and ever, blah, blah, blah." And then he says, "What kind of pedals are you using?" And then he says, "What kind of cymbals are you using?" And he said, "What kind of seat do you sit on?" And so while this is all happening, you know how you kind of like, you zone out, because I kept thinking to myself, does this kid want a job? Because I got a job for this kid in sales. So as we started talking a little further, what do you think he asked me after he found out what type of player I was, what types of drums I used, and the whole nine? What do you think he asked me after about, 10 minutes into the conversation? What do you think he asked me? Let me tell you what he asked me. He said, "If you were going to buy today, are you planning on buying today?" That's a good question, right? Am I just looking, or am I a solid buyer, right? He said, if you were planning on buying today, he goes, I don't know if you are, but if you're planning on buying today, did you have an idea? Here it comes, because you guys are going to love this one. Did you have an idea of what you wanted to spend? Holy crap. Here's a 21-year-old kid asking me, selling me on the floor of this music store, and he gets it, right? And at the very end of him interviewing me and figuring out what type of player I was, and if I was a serious player, he gets it. He said, "What would you want to spend?" Right? Because if I was Jamie, would I really want to push me into a set that's $3,500 or $4,000? No. Why don't I want to do that? Because if I can't spend $4,000, he's wasting his time, right? So he says, "Well, if you could buy today, did you have a budget or idea what you wanted to spend?" And I said, "Yeah, probably around maybe $1,500, $2,000, right around there. I play out quite a bit with my guys, and I'm going to be slugging these things all over town." He says, "Great. Well, let me tell you something. All the $500 drum sets are all on this side of the room, up to about maybe $2,000. And all the drum sets that are real high price, real high quality, and just amazing sets are all on this side of the room, and those are all $2,500 to $5,000. Do you get what happened here on the floor of a music store? This kid was qualifying me on the floor of a music store. He was trying to figure out what kind of buyer I am, if I was a serious buyer, if I was just in to look around. And if I was a serious buyer, what was my budget? What was I looking for? And again, without being redundant here, guys, why would he want to push me into a $5,000 set of drums if I only had $500 to spend? Why would he waste his time? Does that make sense?
Reason number 2, no need.
Okay, so now again, leads us into reason number 2, no need. So I want you to get something to write with, because I'm going to tell you what I'm about to tell you is going to save you a lot of time. It's going to save you a lot of aggravation, and it's going to make you a hell of a lot of money. Okay? Write this down. The more customers understand, the more money they're going to spend. Did you hear what I said? The more customers understand, the more money they will spend. I always find it amazing year after year while coaching and consulting and training in a field how struggling salespeople think that they know and understand the particular needs of a prospect or customer when they truly know nothing about them. Aggravates me. Even some of the savviest sales professionals I've worked with over the years sometimes think they have enough information to close a sale and then can't figure out why that particular prospect or customer hasn't committed to them yet, hasn't committed to the sale. So as you heard me say before, every salesperson is different, and the overall sales approach absolutely varies from culture to culture and country to country. Again, I get that. But notice I said sales approach, because the approach to creating a need for your product or service really rests on how good you are at extracting information out of the person or people that you're meeting with. Do you follow me? Still, the simple fact remains that if someone just doesn't see a need for what you're selling, guess what? They're not going to buy from you. So creating a need for your company, your service, or particular product line can only happen one way, by asking a prospect or customer what? The right questions, right? In particular, asking questions you already know the answers to. I'm going to talk with you real quick about the greatest salesperson, the greatest sales guy of all time. In 1968, a show debuted. It was called Columbo. And Columbo was a detective that, in my opinion, was the greatest salesperson of all time. And the reason why he was the greatest salesperson of all time was because he asked the money questions. He asked the questions that solved the cases. And he was so good at asking the right questions that he would ask questions to folks that he already knew the answers to. And you knew that he already knew the answers to. The writers in that show, the writers in Columbo were genius writers. Now, I know that their goal wasn't to parallel Columbo with a salesperson, but that's exactly what he was. That's exactly who he is. And that's why us as sales folks, as sales professionals, as problem solvers, we have to do the same exact thing. We have to think of ourselves as that Columbo, as that guy where there's no way we're going to figure out how to get to the end of this case or solve this case, which is the prospect or the customer. There's no way we're going to be able to solve problems for folks unless we ask the right questions. I'm not talking about asking a ton of questions either. You know, the type of questions that bore the ever-living life out of people. I'm not talking about those types of questions. I'm talking about the money questions, the take-home pay type of questions. You follow me? How else do you create a need, guys? Now, I know what you're thinking. How many books do you need to read, or how many videos do you need to watch, or how many CDs do you have to listen to that talk about the same exact thing in regards to the importance of questions? I know, I get it. Well, guess what? add this book to the list of books that say I told you so, okay? If you're not asking the right questions that get people thinking and wondering why your product or service would be a good fit, the types of questions that simultaneously educate people, if you're not doing that, then there's a job waiting for you down the street, and it's not in sales, guys. Like I mentioned earlier, the service that I sold reduced a company's risk of electrical system failure and electrical fires, right? It protected the continuity of their business. Electrical failures and fires have cost billions and billions of dollars in lost revenue over the years. And not only that, but without electrical power, nothing runs, right? Seems like a no-brainer sale. Seems like an easy service to sell. Would you? At least it sounds like it, right? I mean, what kind of plant manager or facility director or owner wouldn't want to implement a service like the one I was selling or like the one I was coaching? You follow me? I mean, after all, if you were a business owner and there was a particular problem or situation or some sort of anomaly within your facility, wouldn't you want to know about it? So let's talk about creating a need. And the reason why I set that up just now was because I want to tell you just a quick story about a guy that I was coaching in Alabama. I was with the sales rep who had scheduled a meeting with a small manufacturer who specialized in making motorcycle kickstands of all things, and holy cow, were these guys busy. So, like most meetings, we waited for a bit for our contact person to come out, who just happened to be the owner of the company. So at least we got to the decision maker, right? Anyway, he finally came out and walked us through the area of the shop where we started our meeting. Now remember, this guy has no idea what we do. Okay, when we made our initial phone call to this guy, we said, we just want to come out and see you. We just want to introduce ourselves. Didn't talk a lot about what we did on the phone. We wanted to wait till we got there to really let him know what it is that we did and how we can help his business, right? Okay. So he had no idea really what it is that we do or why we were there or what we were there to even talk about. So he has no idea if he even has a need for this service yet, because we haven't talked to him at all. Do you follow me? So I remember the meeting lasting it was probably about 10 or 15 minutes at best. That's all it took. It took us longer to drive there and park the car than the actual meeting. When we walked out the door, it felt like I'd been dragged through the Twilight Zone, for God's sakes. And I mean that. I'm not trying to be funny, but it was surreal in the wrong way. So imagine how the prospect felt. Now think about that. If I'm confused, if I'm the sales coach, I'm the consultant, I'm the guy there to help this guy. If I'm confused, can you imagine how confused the owner was, the guy we met with? Can you imagine a conversation with someone lasting 10 or 15 minutes and they still have no idea what it is that you do? Think about that. Now, I want you to understand that this was my first meeting with this sales rep in the field. Okay, it was my first time seeing him in front of a prospect. So usually what I do in first time meetings is I let the sales rep do their thing so I can get an idea of where the gaps are within his or her selling process. Does that make sense? I feel like if I were to step in and interrupt something, I'm not getting a true idea of what they're doing when I'm not around, right? So I have to see how they develop that need in their selling process. Do you follow me so far? I'm sure you do. So where did the sales rep go wrong? So first of all, it's completely obvious that this particular guy, this particular sales rep never asked the right questions, right? He never did create that need for the service he was selling, okay? His lack of overall curiosity for the guy's business, right, coupled with his coupled with him being unfamiliar with the service he was selling, was really a lethal combination. It really was. Also, the rep tried building value with features of the service and not the benefits of the service. That's a huge one, by the way. He tried building features of the service and not building the benefits of the service, not talking about the benefits of the service, right? He certainly did more talking than listening. We know that. So, look, folks, this wasn't the first time this type of situation has happened to this guy. You guys would probably agree with that. So as sales professionals, you have to employ some common sense and ask yourself, okay, if I'm not closing things, if things aren't going my way, where am I going wrong? If I'm not getting to the next meeting, if I'm not taking this thing through the sales process, where am I going wrong? Because all the owner kept saying was, I've been in business 15 years. There's never been any problems with my power, with my business since I've been here. Right? That's great, Mr. Owner. Can I leave now? But we didn't leave, so let me just kind of tell you what happened and what the owner had said to us. He said, if you want to look around, you're more than welcome to. Look around for what? What does he think we're looking around for? To do what? Folks, this guy has no idea what we do, how we do it, and most importantly, why we do it. Because the why creates the need. This is the 5 reasons why people don't buy, right? I just want to make sure that we're all listening to the same book here. The why creates the need, guys. There's no reason to walk around this guy's plant. I've had enough exercise that day. In fact, I was in the gym about 6 a.m. that morning. Okay? I don't need any more exercise. So, of course, you guessed it, the sales rep and I do a short walkthrough of the facility. And at the very end, the sales rep grabs the owner and says, okay, I got what I need. I'll call you in a few days with a price. What? Am I getting punked here? Because I need to know where the cameras are. A price for what? For the love of God, if I were the owner, I'd be saying to myself, a price for what? To do what? This prospect is never going to buy anything. Ever. Okay? Not from that sales guy anyways. This particular prospect believes he has, absolutely no need for what we do, guys. Everything's fine. This particular sales rep tried building quick value on, and here it comes, tried building quick value on features of the service and never asked the right questions. Really a no-no in the consulting arena. It's frustrating.
Features versus benefits.
So we just wrapped up no need, right? So let's talk about features versus benefits. And I really want to make sure that you guys are, I want to make sure that you folks understand that if you don't understand the difference between the two, you're going to have very little success in selling. All right, so number one, in regards to features versus benefits. The first one is features aren't what entice customers to want to buy from you. Let me say that again. Features aren't what entice customers to want to buy from you. So if you continue to sell on features alone, you're going to struggle. You're not going to make it. Number two, features will only get people to start listening to you for a short period of time. Number three, it's only when the benefits of those types of features, it's only when the benefits of those features are realized, I should say, is when the sales gates really start to open. You follow me? Number 4, when you sell on features alone, you're making the customer do all the work in trying to figure out why that particular product or service makes sense, or if it serves a purpose. Because if it serves a purpose, the purpose is going to generate a need. Do you follow me? Is this making sense? Number 5, it's only when you're able to focus on the benefits of those features is when people really start to see value and understand how those benefits are going to make their life easier. Features don't make things easier. Benefits do. Number 6, if you're trying to build value on features, that product or service that you're selling can have a tendency to sound very expensive to people. Ever hear anyone say, wow, that sounds really expensive, man? You know why they say that? The reason why they say that is because you're trying to create a need through features, and you can't. Automatically, they start to compare that product or service that you're selling with something that they're familiar with, that to them should only cost X. But they wouldn't know that spending more than X with you makes sense and how it's going to make their life easier because you haven't sold them on the benefits yet. Number 7, only a small majority of buyers, a very small percentage of buyers ever buy on features.
Reason number 3, no authority.
All right, folks, so we're on reason number 3, no authority. And I got to be honest with you, this reason here seems to have most of the sales community kind of baffled across the globe. Well, at least those that don't get it or don't know how to play the authority game anyways, I guess I should say. So the sport of figuring out and determining who is the decision maker or makers is something that I get asked about constantly. I get asked about it all the time. And, I'll get asked, how do we know we're talking to the right person? So again, here we go with the simple fact that salespeople don't ask enough questions, or ask the right questions, I should say, for that matter. So what I've done is I've laid out a few examples for you in ways and means of uncovering someone's authority level, and if we're talking to the right person, okay? So let me just start with number 1 here, and I'm going to go through these, and I'm going to go slow, and I'm going to try to make these as, I guess, as interesting as possible for you so that you can use these in the field and you can use these in your everyday selling process. So number 1, you can ask this. Number 1, besides for yourself, Mr. Prospect, is there anyone else that you'd like to have involved in the decision-making process? Great question, right? Number 2, Mr. Prospect, with a facility this size and with so many different departments and areas, can you share with me the decision-making process here? I love that one. Number 3, in the event that our service or product makes sense for you, did you have an idea of when you'd like to start the work? That's a good one. We're going to see how serious he is about getting this work kicked off, right? Number 4, I'm assuming, Mr. Prospect, that the other services or products that you currently use here were also decided by you as well? That's a money question right there, guys. I'm digging that question. Mr. Prospect, number 5. Mr. Prospect, having worked with so many folks like you and in the same industry, they usually like to keep their first year cost between X and X dollars. Is that where you'd like to start here as well? Number 6. Mr. Prospect, it sounds as if this type of service or product makes sense to you and your business, and you obviously see the need for a service or product like ours. So the last thing I really want to do is bring back a solution or a price or a quote that would be difficult for you to work with. Where do you want me to keep the first year price at? Ballpark. So you guys just heard me talk about the magic word ballpark, right? There's a reason why I use that, because the word ballpark does one thing for us sales folks. It gives us an exact amount. Believe it or not. If I was to ask you what you paid for your service last year, or for that specific product last year, if I was to ask a customer that, you may say, I don't know, I don't remember. But if I ask the customer or that prospect and I say, hey, just kind of ballpark, do you remember what you paid for that service last year? Or just kind of ballpark, do you remember what you paid for that product last year? And I walk them into a price and I say, by the way, just kind of ballpark, do you remember what you paid for that product last year? Was it $5,000, $8,000? He's going to say, you know what? I think it was right around maybe $6,000. You know, what they're doing is they're giving you the exact amount. Ballpark, when you use the word ballpark with a customer or a prospect, and you ask them just to give you a ballpark, they're going to give you the exact amount. Believe me, it happens all the time. Now, again, those reasons I gave you a little bit ago, those were only a few examples on how to uncover someone's authority. But someone's authority really is subject to one thing, and it's a game changer. Their authority is really based on the right price. Did you hear what I said? Their authority is based on the right price. You know, you can build great trust with people and build great rapport and spend money on lunches and golf, and even if the person you're talking with has a great need for what it is that you're selling, that doesn't matter. I mean, it matters, but it doesn't matter if it makes any sense. Let's even say that let's say that they've never seen anything like what you're offering before. What you're offering is absolutely amazing, right? You get the point. But guys, the bottom line is that if we can't get to the decision maker, the person with the authority, then you're in a heap of trouble, guys. Out of hundreds of sales meetings I've been a part of, 80 to 90% of the prospects with whom we first met with, our first face-to-face meeting, had the authority to sign off on something under the right price. Now, of course, as sales professionals, it's our job to do our due diligence and make sure that the people we're meeting with are the folks that would have the most interest or would benefit the most from the product or services that we're selling, obviously. Let me spend a few minutes on this sales stymier, and I don't know if stymier is even a word, but I'm going to use it anyways. When they say, this looks good, I need to pass it up, I need to send it up to your corporate and see what corporate thinks. So how many times have you heard that classic blow off, I'm going to send it up through corporate, we'll see what happens? Really? After all that work we put into this, after all that time I spent with you, Mr. Customer, Mr. Prospect, and sometimes Mr. Client, you never know. After all that time we spent each other, you're really going to send this up to corporate? You really have to send this up to corporate? Now, I can understand sending up to corporate if we're talking about a super high price tag. I get that. where it's one of those situations where it's the price tag is so high, the guy, not anyone at the facility that you work with has the authority to sign off on what it is or the scope of work that you are putting together. I get that. They have to sign up through corporate if it's a stupid high price tag. I get that. But 99.9% of the time, that's not the case. Think about how many hours you have invested in this prospect. And didn't I just explain to you in the above paragraph that most of the people with whom you make your first contact with usually have the authority to sign up on something? That's true. It's your job to figure out what that something is, because it's not about landing that multi-million-dollar job order. That's going to come. That's going to happen. And that's going to happen because of the trust that you guys have with each other, because of the rapport that you have with each other, and because of the need that you're creating. Okay? That's going to come. It's about getting enough sales one slice at a time is what this is about right now. I mean, landing that monster agreement would be pretty darn cool. I get it. And you'd be the hero for a little while, right? But it's really about developing that trust, like I said, and that rapport. Getting whatever it takes to start that relationship. I mean, look, guys, your employer is spending a lot of money on you, okay? Between training, providing you with the right sales tools, and everything else in between, they're counting on you to be the expert because you told them that you were the expert when you interviewed with them, okay? And you're leaving the fate of the sale in the hands of corporate people who you've never met, who've never met you, people who have no idea why they need a service or product like yours. And as far as they're concerned, there's no sense of urgency because you're not there consulting on the features and benefits of your business, of your product or your service. There's no relationship or trust. And by not getting to the person with the authority, you now have a sales cycle. And think about this for a second. You now have a sales cycle that's going to probably double or triple in length, or worse yet, not close at all, in worst case scenario, simply because you couldn't figure out the decision-making process and where the authority level was. Let me give you an example how important it is to get the person or persons with authority, to get them involved, okay? Years ago, I was coaching a sales rep out of Florida who had invited one of his best friends to lunch with us, and we'll just call him Todd, okay? So while at lunch, I got to know Todd pretty well, and of course, the question came up, and I asked, what do you do for a living, right? Like anybody would, you're eating lunch and you're talking about work and life and everything else. What do you do for a living? And at that time, Todd was selling home improvement products in a residential market, for a local construction company. So he was selling windows, doors, roofing, siding, things like that. Okay. So like anyone, I asked a simple question, how's business, Todd? And he said, I'm seeing a lot of people every week. And we've got some great products, and the homeowners seem to really be interested in what we have to offer. He said, but I'm having some real issues with getting commitments out of folks and out of the people I'm talking to. He said, I'm only closing about 20 to 25% of what I'm proposing. And I was like, man, 20 or 25%, holy crap. He goes, if this keeps up, I'm really going to have to, start thinking about a plan B. And I kind of zoned out, and I was thinking about the things that he was saying to me. And then he said, people just can't seem to make up their minds. So, when he said that, as curiosity would have it, I started asking questions about the products that he was selling and the cost of those products. So, again, being curious, I started off by asking, what their best-selling windows were, what those were going for, what roof costs were going for, siding, and just getting a general idea and asking general questions that would help me in identifying what the reason or reasons would be for these potential prospects not to make a final decision, or worse yet, any decision at all for that matter, But after talking with him, his prices seemed competitive. And, I have to say, nothing really shocked me or jumped out at me as being unreasonable, okay? Then I asked if he emails his proposals to the homeowners, which most people in residential sales do. He said no, only if I'm pressed for time. Well, red flag number one, delivering a proposal through email the first time is a throat cutter, right? How do you develop trust and rapport by delivering your proposals through email? You have to hand deliver them. You have to sit down with that customer, with that prospect, and review the scope of work and review what it is that you're doing together, right? You have to deliver that proposal in person. So then I asked what types of tools he was using to help close the deal and commit the customer to the sale or to a start date. He said tools. Well, that was red flag number two. So here's what I found out. I finally asked a question about his sales process and how he goes about getting the final price and scope of work back to the homeowner. And here's what he said. He said, once I have the proposal ready, I call the homeowner and I schedule a face-to-face appointment. I said, great. That's what I wanted to hear. Good man, good job, awesome. Then I asked him this question. And I wish you guys could have seen the look on his face. I said, how often are you meeting with both decision makers, both the husband and the wife? And if I could have taken a picture of this guy's face, he had that look like a light bulb had just gone off over his head. You know what I'm talking about? So I'm sure you're already anticipating probably what he said to me. He said, rarely, if ever, do I get a chance to deliver my proposal to both of the husband and wife at the same time. He looked right at me and said, well, that's my problem. See, what's happening is the authority lies with both of the husband and the wife, right? Neither wants to make a final decision without the other. It's obvious. And not only is he extending his sales cycle, but it's like the classic blow off. Let me send it up to corporate and see what happens. You follow me? So here's what I said. I said, why don't you try and change up your strategy? Explain to both the husband and the wife how important it is for each of them to be home. Tell them this improvement is very important to them, and that in the event you've missed something, you like to have both of them home so that you can make any adjustments that you might need and move forward with the project. I got a phone call from my sales rep about, I don't know, it must have been about 4 weeks later, I think. He said, Todd just called me and said he was named Salesman of the Month. How cool is that? No need for plan B, I guess, right?
Reason number 4, no money.
All right, guys, it's no secret that with the state of the economy over the past several years, that budgets have either vanished, right, or have been severely cut. Now, I know that times are getting a hell of a lot better than they were 6 or 7 years ago, but times are tough. And tough times make whatever you're selling, just that much harder, right? So with no help from the recession, we live in a culture of people that are programmed to say no. So think about that. I've experienced that. You've experienced that. How often have you heard a prospect say that there's no money in our budget for something like this? Or we'll have to put this in next year's budget. What? But what are they really saying? Well, here's some food for thought, guys. And where being a good listener separates the pros from the average Joes. I know that was really cheesy. I'm sorry for that. So I get it. If the company or person you're calling on just doesn't have the money, I understand. I understand that. It happens, and it's possible their company isn't doing well for several reasons, right? Maybe they've just had a fire in their facility, or they just laid off 25 people, or they're being bought out and all spending is frozen. I get it. There's a ton of reasons why they say we have no money. I get it. But I want you to hear something. From my experience, no money usually doesn't mean literally no money. So let me explain. I was coaching a guy in London, England some years ago, and I witnessed this sales rep get up at the end of our meeting after it wasn't even the end of our meeting. It was really, I think the meeting lasted about 10 or 15 minutes at best with a very large facilities management firm. And again, it may have not even been 10 or 15 minutes. So he decided to end the meeting because to him, when they said, "Oh, we have no money," when he heard them say that, that was the mother of all roadblocks. And that seems to be the mother of all roadblocks for a lot of sales professionals out there. When you hear that those couple of words, "we have no money," that seems to really stymie you guys, and it's very difficult for you to backpedal and figure out where you're going to go from there when somebody tells you that. So here's what you need to understand, and it's critical. This is a critical part of the selling game, right? When it comes down to the classic, we have no money roadblock, asking the right questions is so very critical and essential to your success and uncovering where that money is. Do you follow me? Here's the exciting part, and this should make you feel a hell of a lot better. What I want you to realize is that 9 out of 10 times, the money's there. I want you to know that. And what you need to realize is that they, the prospect, simply didn't plan for what you're selling or offering. Did you hear what I said? The money's there, guys. They just didn't plan on you walking through the door and spending the money with you. You follow me? The money is there, only you weren't on the list of people they were planning on handing it out to. Look, you're in business, right? You deal with businesses. You understand budgeting. What are budgets, right? Budgets are usually looked at either as a operating budget or a capital budget, right? Two very different buckets, yes, but depending on what you're selling, the money to finance the transaction or the need is in either of those two buckets. Do you follow me? So operating budgets indicate the products or services a company expects to use within a certain period of time, right? And capital budgets summarize expenses and costs of major purchases for the following year, right? So both buckets are very different, right? But monies can be pulled from either one of these buckets if the prospect or customer sees a need in what you have to offer. Right? There's that need thing again. So if a prospect or a customer has no trust in you, has no need for what you're selling, has no authority to give you the order, and certainly has no money, what else could possibly go wrong? The answer to that is that you deliver to them the wrong price.
Reason number 5, wrong price.
All right, look, guys, we've talked about the first 4 reasons. And this last reason, number 5, one of the main reasons why people don't buy from you or aren't buying from you is you're delivering the wrong price. And by delivering the wrong price to a prospect or customer, it moves you from a sales professional to an estimator. You know, I got to throw this out there and say that this is truly one of the biggest ball droppers of all time. And I'm frankly amazed at how often this colossal last reason is overlooked, I guess, for lack of better words. I'm actually having trouble on where to start with this one. I mean, look, folks, out of all the reasons why people don't buy, if the price is wrong, then expect to go home empty-handed. It really is that simple. There'll be no signature for you. There's not going to be any purchase order number, no verbal commitment, no locking them into a start date from the calendar that you're using, and certainly no commission, nada, nothing. And if you keep delivering the wrong price, you'll get to stay home permanently and catch up on those DVR episodes of your favorite TV shows because you won't have a gig. As an owner or general manager, if you, the sales professional, aren't selling, I'm sorry, I don't need you. What I do need you to do is understand that all of these 5 reasons wrap around and kind of intertwine with each other like some sort of crazy sales root system. And wrong price or delivering the wrong price just happens to be at the heart of this root system. You follow me? Look, here's what I mean, and I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible, guys. In sales, developing trust early on in the relationship is critical as to whether or not someone chooses to hear you out and continues to listen to you, right? Trust can be developed in many ways, and it's really a vibe thing that has to happen on both sides of the selling fence. Would you agree with that? I mean, the right vibe is a part of your natural sales moxie. Would you agree? Lack of trust or lack of rapport can and will collapse the sales process within seconds. I'm sure you guys have experienced that. And I think we've all experienced that at some point in our professional careers. Creating that need or creating a need and value for your product or service throughout each meeting is obviously vital in whether or not that prospect would want to spend money with you or start to budget for what it is that you're selling. And if there's a need and the trust is there, then you're in pretty darn good shape. Is this making sense? Is this I hope this is all coming together for you guys. So what if the prospect or customer you're calling on has the money and has budgeted for a product or services like yours? You're in good shape, right? Would you guys agree with that? Or maybe they're a user of your product or service, so they already know what to expect or have a budget number in place, right? So remember, if the need, the trust, and the money are there, then you're having one hell of a good day, guys, right? I'm sure you guys would agree with that. If the prospect or customer you're calling on is the decision maker and has the authority, then it's going to get even better. You're going to have an even better day. Your day is starting off pretty damn good, right? But remember that most of the prospects you're talking to only have the authority to set up to a particular dollar amount or cap, and it's your job, it's our job as sales professionals to find out and uncover what that magical number is. Now, when you add up all these reasons and combine them with talking to the right person, your odds of closing any deal become very exciting, guys. However, here's the kicker, and where it can all change very quickly. In my book, from my experience in selling, in my book, even if you're able to connect the first 4 reasons of why people don't buy, then believe it or not, your odds of closing that sale are still only about 50%. And I know that sounds probably crazy to you, but it really is the truth. Because the rules of the game say that the other half, the other 50% weighs that heavy on whether or not the price that you are laying down in front of them works or if it doesn't. Please tell me that you heard that. By introducing the wrong price, you will undoubtedly immobilize the sales process and stymie the entire cycle. By delivering the wrong price, you're going to freeze the trust. As far as a need goes, that's not going to matter anymore. The money they had is going to turn into no money. And of course, your decision maker will instantaneously turn into no authority. Do you understand that? All because you put a number in front of someone that simply didn't work.
The big 3.
All right, guys, we talked about the 5 reasons why people don't buy, so let's talk about the big 3. So when I say the big 3, this is a game that I use. This is a process that I use for myself when I am looking at or trying to understand whether or not someone is going to buy. So here's what I mean. This is a game about having 3 positives out of those 5 reasons why people don't buy. Nobody knows you better than you. Would you guys agree with that? Of course you would. I want you to think about the last meeting you just had with a prospect or customer where you were absolutely sure you were going to get the business. Okay? The problem is that you're still waiting on a decision. So let me ask you, how do you sales check yourself now? Think about that for a second. When you guys walk out of a meeting, when you guys walk out of a presentation, when you walk out of that room where you've just laid all your cards out on the table, how do you sales check yourself? How do you walk out of that meeting and go, you know what? If you had 3 buckets, I'm gonna throw this into my 90% bucket. They're going to buy from me. I'm going to throw this into my 60% bucket. They're on the fence. There's probably a good chance they're going to buy from me, but there were a few people in that meeting that just weren't sure. Or maybe your 30% bucket where, you know what? I did a great job in the presentation. My scope of work was great. I know I got the right product or service, but you know what? It just didn't seem like I could get them over that hump to where I thought they were going to buy from me. So think about, how do you sales check yourself now when you come out of meetings? What is your process? Your goal, our goal as sales professionals, each and every meeting is to attain at least 3 out of the 5 reasons we just covered in this book. Did you hear what I said? That is your process moving forward. Your process moving forward is to attain 3 out of the 5 reasons why people don't buy. You need 3 positives out of those 5. You need 3 positives out of those 5 in order to start doing business with people. You have to sales check yourself and say, hey, look, out of those 5, say you have the trust, the need is there, and the price is right. Or the money is there, you know you have the authority, they have the authority to sign off on, and the need is there. Whatever that mix and match is, however you intertwine these 5, again, if you're able to get 3 positives out of those 5, I guarantee you will bump up your closing. You will bump up your sales 50% or more. I guarantee it. You're going to enjoy what you're doing because sales isn't going to be a hassle anymore. It's a game, and you have to have all the pieces of the puzzle to win the game, guys. You follow me? You're going to be looked at as the subject expert in sales at your company and by your peers and your colleagues. And you know the most exciting part? People are going to want to learn from you because you're doing it right.
8 tips to crushing sales.
Hey guys, I want to review with you 8 key tips to really crushing your sales quotas. And I want you guys to remember these, write them down, do whatever you have to do. But I want you to remember these 8 key tips because these are money makers for you like everything else. And I want you guys to think about these each and every day when you get up in the morning. And the first tip that I have for you is, number 1, understand that not everyone is your customer. You have to understand that you have to call on, it's your job to solicit and call on the right people that are the right fit, not only for your product and service, but also for your company. There has to be time that you guys need to have in order to do your due diligence in making sure that the people you're calling on are a good fit for the things that you are selling. Does that make sense? Not everyone is your customer. And you really need to understand that because, I've talked to sales folks all over the world. And they said, yeah, man, I can sell this thing. I can sell this product to anybody. I can sell this service to anybody. Who wouldn't want this? That's not true. You guys need to understand that not everyone is your customer. And it's up to you guys to solicit the folks that are going to be the key buyers and the key people that are going to see value in the service or products that you're offering. Does that make sense? The second one is I want you guys to make time to cross-sell your existing customers and clients. I can't tell you how important it is to sell your clients and your customers the additional services and the additional things that you guys offer as a company. You follow me? It happens way too often where we have prospect or customers that only buy certain things from us, and they're only used to buying those specific things from us. And the only reason why they're buying those specific things is because you haven't told them, because you haven't consulted them on what else is available to them. Do you follow me? How many times have you been in a meeting with, whomever, and you're talking in a meeting and you're talking about the things that you guys offer as a company, and your customer or your client says to you, you know what? I didn't know you guys did that. I didn't know you guys offered that. That's interesting. So think about that. Think about where that disconnect is. It's your job to cross-sell your existing customers and clients the services or products that you guys offer and to educate them on the options that they have. Does that make sense? The third one's a big one. And the third one for me is I want you guys to plan to sell something every day. When you get up in the morning, you have to know where that low-hanging fruit is. You have to know what happened the day before that, and who was on the fence in regards to buying, and who was almost there and ready to go. You have to plan to sell something every day. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a $1,500 agreement, a $1,500 product, or a $20,000 product or agreement. It doesn't matter to me. You have to get up, and your mindset every day is to sell something every day. Number 4, I want you to add at least 6 new sales calls every week. If you don't do that, your pipeline, I know you guys have heard people say this 1,000 times, but I'm going to say it anyways. If you don't add, and this is just me, if you don't add at least 6 new sales calls each week, you are not going to see the results that you're going to need in order to make quotas. You can't keep selling your existing customers. It doesn't work that way. We have to bring on new people each and every day, right? We have to plan on selling something every single day, like I said prior. So let's plan on getting at least 6 new calls each week with people we don't know, people we've never met before. You follow me? Here's number 5. You really have to know your territory. That's so important. I can't even tell you how many times I've interviewed folks, or folks have come through training to where they came from, as an example, they came from Cleveland, Ohio, and now they've been plopped into Nashville, Tennessee. Or they came from New York City and now they're getting plopped into South Carolina. Well, that's great, and you might know sales, but the problem is that you don't know the territory. And if you don't know the territory, you don't know the vertical markets. And if you don't know the vertical markets, you don't know who to call on, and you don't know what's hot. Does that make sense? You really have to key in on what's hot in my territory and what has the shortest sales cycle. Does that make sense? Here's number 6. I want you to touch base with your customers and clients just because. Now you're probably saying, what the hell does that mean? I want you to call folks just because. I want you to touch them just because. If somebody's already been doing business with you, or somebody's already bought from you, and that happened last week, I want you to call them and touch base with them just because. If somebody bought from you 6 months ago and you know they're not going to buy from you again for another 6 months to a year, I want you to touch base with them just because. Because when you do that, What you're doing is you're showing, in my opinion, two things. You're showing interest in them and what they do. And I guess the next one is you're showing that you're thinking about them and you're caring about what it is that they're doing and how they're trying to build their business. Does that make sense? Do you follow me? I want you to touch base with customers and clients just because. Just call people, man. That's all I want you to do. I want you to call people. I want you to touch base with them. And I want you to say, hey, man, I'm calling just because I was driving to my next meeting, or I was driving to my kid's soccer practice, or I was driving to my kid's lacrosse practice, or whatever it is. I want you to call them and say, hey, look, I was calling you just because I was thinking about you. How are you doing? How's everything going? I'm not looking to sell you anything. I just wanted to say hello. When you do that, I promise it's going to pay the dividends that you're looking for. Maybe not in that phone call, but certainly down the road, and it's not going to be too long before they buy from you again. You follow me? All right, so number 7, understanding your sales process versus your sales cycle. Now, most people are confused with these two steps, even though you shouldn't be. And there is variations of these, and they do exist out there. But let me just share with you my professional opinion and what these mean, because it's not complicated, okay? Your sales process is a system. It's a repeatable process of specific steps that chart out and track basically where you're at with a specific prospect. Does that make sense? And maybe you have 3 steps to your process. Maybe you have 5 steps to your process. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Depends on what you're selling. But it's your process from start to finish, right? Your sales cycle is your length of time it takes for your solution or your quote to close, which is based on how effective your sales process is. Do you follow me? And keeping track of your sales cycle gives a company it can give them insight into the effectiveness of their sales process. Does that make sense? So look at and track your average sales cycle. How long is it taking you to build the trust, to create the need, to find the authority, to uncover the budget, and to deliver the right price? Keep track of your sales process, which is going to help you keep track of your sales cycle. That makes sense? Number 8, I want you to prospect for referrals every day of the week. If the day ends in the letter Y, it's a day for you to prospect. Let me tell you what I used to do after each and every time we used to close out business and a customer would give me an order and I would bring them on and they were happy and everybody was smiles. What I used to do 10 out of 10 times is I would ask my customer, once they were happy with the service, I would say, Adam, thanks so much for your business. I appreciate it. Do you know anybody in your industry or in your business that is experiencing the same types of issues that you're having or that you've had? Is there anybody in your industry that you have meetings with or that you know that you think can use a service like mine or a product like mine? And I'll tell you what, I would probably say out of the last 2 or 3 years that I was selling in the field, the service that I was selling, I didn't cold call at all because I was getting referrals from my current customer and client base because I was asking for them. I was prospecting for those referrals.
Sales quick tips.
All right, guys, I put together just a series of some sales quick tips for you. And I want you to really kind of hone in on these because I think these are very important to your everyday selling and the way that you guys are doing business each and every day. And I hope some of this makes sense to you. So again, just put together a couple of sales quick tips, and I think these are important. So the first one is that The single biggest tool in closing business, no matter what you're selling, is a paper calendar. Let me say it again. The single biggest tool in closing business, no matter what you're selling, is a paper calendar. And the reason why that is that there's a psychology behind actually penciling someone in and committing them to a start date. It doesn't work the same with the cell phone. It doesn't work the same with anything else. But when you actually have a paper calendar, and I still use it today, when I open up that paper calendar and I say, okay, Adam, I'm going to start you on May 22nd. I'm going to pencil you in right now. If you have to change or flip-flop the date, doesn't matter, but at least I want to get you on the books. At least I want to get you penciled in right now, because if I don't pencil you in right now, someone else is going to take that date, or something else is going to happen, and I don't want that date to fluctuate, and I don't want someone else to grab that date from you. The single biggest sales tool in closing business is the paper calendar. Please do me a favor and do yourselves a favor and start using a paper calendar to help commit people to a start date and asking for the business. Okay? Another quick sales tip is you have to be good, and I know you guys have heard this 1,000 times. Time management is key to your success. It doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing. Time management is really going to determine whether or not you're successful or you're not. I remember I used to, in between meetings, I would get out my computer, my phone, whatever it was. If I had an extra 10 or 15 minutes or an extra 3 minutes to call someone, to get a hold of someone, to email someone, to ask them for their business because I wanted to sell something. My goal was to sell something every day. If I had just a little bit of time to do that, I was using that little bit of time to bring more customers or clients on board and to commit someone to a start date. Do you follow me? Your time management is so key as to whether or not you're going to be successful or you're not going to be. I can't stress it enough. Here's the next key tip. I want you guys to be concerned if your customer isn't spending additional money with you. If someone is buying once or twice from you and you don't hear from them, that's a red flag. Remember earlier in those 8 key sales tips, one of the tips I had mentioned to you and had told you about was get in touch with people just because. Well, when you do that, what that does is that triggers sales and that triggers options, further options. And again, if someone isn't spending additional money with you, you need to figure out where that disconnect is and what am I doing wrong and how can I make that shift? What can I do now to make this guy he's buying $1,000 with me a month right now to spending $5,000 a month with me, or now I want him to spend $10,000 a month with me. Does that make sense? Be concerned if you have a customer that's only spending a little bit of money with you here and there. Here's the next tip. If you guys ever heard the saying, your price is too high. Well, let's think about that for a second, because you and I both know that the results of quality work last a hell of a lot longer than the shock of high prices, right? If someone tells you that your price is too high, what is that telling us as salespeople? That means that we didn't do a good enough job in investigating what it is that they needed, why they need it, where they're hurting in business, and also looking at other prices or an additional scope of work that they're getting from another vendor or service provider like you. Because if they're getting another price from another service vendor or someone else that provides a product or service like yours, and they're telling you that your price is too high, what are they comparing that to? Let me just make this very simple. If someone says your price is too high, make sure that the scope of work that you've developed and the scope of work that they have in front of them from another vendor or another service provider is the same. Does that make sense? Because remember, guys, paying less doesn't make it a better deal for getting less. You follow me? All right, guys, next sales quick tip is this. You have to sales check yourself throughout the process, which I'm sure that you professionals out there already do. So sales checking yourself throughout the sales process is something that we have to do on a daily basis, right? Here's one thing I want you guys to understand. Providing your customers, your prospects, with multiple choices, with multiple options, doesn't give you better odds. Do you follow me? You have to take one proposal to a meeting and be sure about the scope of work and the proposal that you're taking to that meeting. If you take 2 or 3 different proposals or 2 or 3 different options to a meeting, what happens is that prospects or customers become confused and they tend to not make any decisions at all because you've given them too much to think about. So think about that.
Management quick tips.
All right, guys, we're going to get into a few management quick tips here for you that I think are going to be helpful for you. And I think that these management quick tips are things that you need to keep with you in your hip pocket as you're managing people, as you're managing process, certainly within your sales meetings every week, in your plan and review meetings and things like that. So just some management quick tips. And we're going to kind of go through these quickly. And I'm hoping that you're going to get a lot out of these because these are important. And I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to kind of run through these pretty fast here. So just some quick tips here quickly. 1, managers, if you're struggling managing salespeople, I want you to do me a favor, do yourself a favor, and make these 5 reasons why people don't buy a part of your weekly sales meetings, and certainly implement these on your one-on-ones. When you're meeting with your team each week for your sales meetings, and you're going through activity, and you're going through proposals, and you're going through things that are hanging on the fence, you need to absolutely ask the question, do we have a need? Do they have the money? Is there a trust? Do we have the right price? We need to ask ourselves those things. We need to ask our people those things to figure out how our team is consulting, how our team is creating better options and figuring out how our team is selling out there so we can close more business and we can get, and we can all live happier. Does that make sense? So use these 5 reasons why people don't buy on your one-on-ones and in your sales meetings every week. Quick tip number 2, I guess. You're going to be able to recognize the gaps within a certain salesperson's selling process almost immediately by using these 5 reasons why people don't buy. If we consistently have business hanging on the fence, if we consistently have people wanting to think about it, wanting to think about whether or not they want to do business with you, review these 5 reasons why people don't buy, again, in each and every meeting. And I hate to be redundant, but these are almost a real-time way. That's probably the best way of saying it, actually. These 5 reasons why people aren't buying is a real-time way of figuring out what's going on out there, not only with the way that your sales professional is selling, but also with the way that the buyer is perceiving the service or what they think it is that you do. Does that make sense? Sales tip number 3, I guess. In order to have great management, management has to have a connection with their employees. You have to have that connection. You have to be interested in everything that they're doing. Does that make sense? If I'm a sales professional and I'm looking at you as my manager, and for lack of better words, the person with the answers, I have to look at you as a problem solver with me. That's management. Management shows interest in everything under their influence, and you have to be a problem solver along with your team. That's the management that I look for. That's the management that I hope for, and that's the management that I'm hoping that you guys are providing in the field. Here, let's look at prospecting real quick from a management perspective. When it comes to prospecting, what our sales folks do today is going to affect them 3 months from now. That's about the average sales cycle in regards to something that I propose today, as far as the closing time. Does that make sense? So let me just try to make sense of this real quick. So if this was August and I said, how was your October? You're probably going to look at me like I'm an idiot. Okay? But let's just say this is October and we're in a sales meeting and we're looking through proposals and we're looking at numbers, we're prospecting and we're figuring out what can we plan on closing? How can we forecast what we have coming in? And if this is October if this was August and I said, hey, how was your October? Again, you look at me like, well, Sean, this is August. What do you mean, how was my October? Well, it's very simple. And without getting real deep into this, what you propose in August is going to affect your October. Does that make sense? Everything that you're doing in August is going to affect of what the October outcome is going to be. So if you have nothing going on in August, or very little going on in August, we can probably pretty much guess that your October is going to be very thin. So I can pretty much tell you what your October is going to be from the sheer fact that your August has nothing. Does that make sense? All right, guys, the next management tip is spending time with your sales team in the field is key. Because being able to catch or notice issues early on before they become something that you cannot control, or before they become out of control, is something that us as sales managers we have to make sure that we are riding with these folks, we are mentoring these folks, and we are understanding what it is that they're going through from a day in and a day out basis. So making sure that you're spending time with your sales professionals in the field, whether it's 1 day a week, 2 days a week, 2 times a month, whatever it is, we have to make sure that we're allowing ourselves that time in the field with our sales professionals. Because I got to be honest with you too, sales professionals, it's the reason why I coach and the reason why I train is because when I'm in a field with a sales professional and we get out of a meeting and we're reviewing what happened in that meeting, how did it go? Do we think they're going to buy? Do we, where do we think that we built the most value? Where do we think we created the most need? Do we have the trust and the rapport? Do they have the money? Being able to go through those types of scenarios with your sales manager from a sales professional perspective is an awesome thing. So you have to make sure that you're supporting your sales team in the field. Again, whether it's every month, every week, whatever your schedule allows, you have to make sure that you're doing that each and every week. Because if somebody is failing, that means either you're managing it or you're allowing it to happen. You follow me? Here's another quick tip, guys. Getting feedback from your sales team as to how customers or clients are perceiving our company, our product, or our service is going to be key. And you want them to be as honest as they possibly can. So let me just, and I heard this from Fred Smith. You guys all know who Fred Smith is. Fred Smith is a founder of FedEx, right? So here's a great quote from Fred Smith. He said, "The key to good management is when people that you work with aren't afraid to deliver you bad news." So think about that. What Fred's saying is that, in his opinion, having great management is when great management comes to him and says, "Hey, Fred, we need to fix this. This isn't working here. We thought this was the best idea, but we got to adjust this and we got to adjust this." So making sure that we are getting feedback from our sales reps in the field, our sales professionals in the field, is going to be key to us as managers to figure out how do we adjust the things that we need to adjust in order to make life easier for not only our sales professionals, but also for our clients. Managers, another quick tip for you. Make sure that you're understanding how your sales professionals are asking for the business. We had just talked earlier about riding with them in the field. And as you're riding with them in the field, you're going to understand if they are asking for the business. And if they are asking for the business, how are they doing it? How are they positioning themselves? You know, we had talked earlier about the greatest sales tool in the world, which is the paper calendar, and committing somebody to a start date, committing somebody to doing business with you, saying, "Hey, Bob, I got you down for April 21st. I have you penned in. Thanks for doing business with me. At least if I have you penned in, nobody can take that date. And if you have to give me a PO or a signature, it's not a big deal. But at least I have you in on that date." So whatever that is, how are your sales professionals asking for the business? Because when you get in your sales meetings every single week, you know, as you're going through the 5 reasons why people don't buy, and you're going through all these other scenarios in your sales meeting, you know, ask the question, did you ask for the business? And how did you ask for the business? And how did you commit them to doing business with you? Does that make sense? All right. Just a couple of things left before we wrap this thing up. Recruiting for me as a sales professional and as someone who manages people is key. Because we always have to be on the lookout for the next superstar. You know, social media has given us a platform that we didn't have 5, 10, or 15 years ago. How often are you on LinkedIn? How often are you on Facebook? How often are you on Instagram? How often are you on Twitter? And if the answer to that is pretty darn often, then on a daily basis, you come across sales professionals and folks that may be an option for you as a sales professional. Because I have to tell you that everybody is willing to jump ship for the right price and for the right opportunity. Doesn't matter who they are. If you put the right price and the right opportunity in front of somebody, they are going to look at it, they're going to weigh their options, and they're going to go, you know what? What I have here in my left hand isn't as good as what you're offering me. Let's figure out how to do this thing. You always have to be on the lookout for that next superstar, for that next person in line who's going to help your business get to where it needs to be. Does that make sense? You follow me? Last sales management quick tip, guys. Not training your team is not an option for you. You need to make time and budget for the things that your team needs month in, month out, year in, year out to help them get the support and the education that they need to get better.
We are out of here.
All right, guys, like Phil said, we are out of here. Just some quick acknowledgments. First off, Richard Casey, thanks so much for telling me to get into sales. Years and years ago, you were right. I should have listened to you earlier. And Frank Sampson, thanks so much for all that you do and for showing me the ways and means to build relationships and create rapport with people. And you're just an ace at that, and I learned from the best. So find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can find me at my website, SeanSampsonTraining.com. Check out Grab It. Look forward to talking with you and look forward to working with you. And I wish you all nothing but the best. Thanks.